Divas, November 5th. What is November 5th? You know what it is. That is the general election. Some of you know that I am a lot of an election supervisor stan. Is it a stan when it's a female fangirl? If not, stan. We have a really special 2-episode program for you where we're talking with 2 different supervisors of elections over the next 2 weeks to prepare all the divas and their friends with everything they need to know about Florida elections before November 5th. This week, we will have former state senator, former state house member, who is the supervisor of elections in Lake County, Alan Hayes. Yes, Alan Hayes, we have him this week in very, very deep red county there in Lake County. Then next week, we will have Pinellas County Supervisor of Elections, Julie Marcus. She's been in the elections business for many, many years. You'll hear all about her next week. Her district is a little more evenly divided, a very different kind of voter registration makeup. But today we start with Alan Hayes. We're going to cover a lot of territory over the next 2 weeks. I learned a lot. I hope you do too. Stick with us. You won't want to miss it. Let's get ready to vote.
Let me clearly state that regardless of what anybody else may say, the Florida system of elections administration is the gold standard for the United States. There is not another state anywhere that does it any better than Florida, and most of them don't do it as well as we do.
You're listening to Deeper Dive with Dara, a podcast by the News Service of Florida. Let's dive in.
Okay, hello divas, and welcome to a Deeper Dive. Today we have a special guest who is also one of my OGs. And we are recording this the day after National Voter Registration Day. We've talked a lot about different things going on in the political world on previous episodes, but today we have Lake County Supervisor of Elections, Alan Hayes. Welcome to the show.
Hello, Dara and audience. Glad to be with you today. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. And one of the reasons I reached out to you is you bring a unique perspective to the Supervisor of Elections position. When I looked it up, I was Googling yesterday, I saw you were elected in 2016 as supervisor, and I can't believe that much time has gone by, because you also served in the State House and the State Senate, which is where we first met, and that's why I said you're one of my OGs. And time has really flown since you left the legislature and took over elections down there in Lake County.
It has indeed, and it's almost staggering to realize that this year's the 20th anniversary of my first ever political venture when I was elected to the House. And here I am 20 years later, still enjoying it.
That's right. 20 years. That's amazing. Yeah. That is amazing. Well, elections and election laws and changes to the elections laws have been in the news. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on. Also, Lake County is just it's political kind of a hot mess down there in Lake County. You can't see him, but he is giving me a definite yes to that. So we can talk a little bit about Lake County later, but I wanted to have you on because you've got people on the right, and maybe even some in Lake County, who are raising questions about things like mail-in ballots, which is something that Republicans in Florida helped to take over the majority. They used mail-in ballots as a method to help them take over in the majority everywhere in the state legislature and in the cabinet and governor's office. So tell me what is going on with mail-in ballots. How do you process them? How do you compare signatures? How do you update voter registration lists? Let's go over through some of the nuts and bolts and and you've been pretty outspoken against your critics. So just let me hear what you have to say.
First, Dara, thank you for this opportunity, because I have total confidence in the American voter and their collective wisdom. And I feel embarrassed that so many false statements have been made pertaining to the world of elections in the last 4 years. And I cherish this opportunity to speak the truth to everybody that's listening and give them the straight up facts. And I have found over and over again, people can deal with the truth. It's the lies that they have so much difficulty with. They may not like the truth, but at least they know it's the truth. And so I welcome this opportunity to speak out and to tell you exactly what it is. Let me clearly state that regardless of what anybody else may say, the Florida system of elections administration is the gold standard for the United States. There is not another state anywhere that does it any better than Florida, and most of them don't do it as well as we do. And there's several reasons for that. Number one, we start tabulating our vote by mail ballots 3 or 4 weeks before the election. By federal statute, we mail the overseas ballots 45 days before the election. We follow that, according to state statute, about 5 days later, mailing our domestic vote by mail ballots. And so as soon as they start coming in to us, we then begin the signature verification process. Every single ballot that comes back has that signature on it verified and compared against a signature in that voter's record. We need to clarify also that here in Florida, we do not mail ballots to anybody who does not have a request active in their voter record. And the legislature in 2011 moved the renewal period from every 2 years to every 4 years. Then in 2022, I believe it was,
Yes.
they said, no, let's go back to 2 years. So you must refresh your request for a vote by mail ballot every 2 years. But if you don't have an active request in your record, we don't mail you a ballot. So when those ballots come back, we begin the verification process. If there's any issue with that signature not matching the voter record signature, we notify the voter immediately, and they are able to go through the cure process, which simply is sign an affidavit and send us a copy of your driver's license, and you're done. At that time, that envelope goes on into the regular processing. But prior to that, signature cure, that envelope has been set aside in the wait till we get the authorization. So then once the canvassing board meets and we do our logic and accuracy test and prove to the public that our systems are working correctly, all our tabulation is working correctly, we then get authorization from the canvassing board to begin the tabulation of the ballots. And there we just open them up and run them through the tabulation machines, and the race is on.
Right.
And that enables us then on election night, as soon as 7 p.m. or whenever the polls close, most time at 7 p.m., we're then able to post on our website all of the vote by mail totals as of that particular moment and all of the early voting totals, because early voting ends on either Sunday or Saturday before the election. And so that gives Florida a big head start on the reporting. Thus, the only thing remaining is the election day totals, and they come in from the precincts through the evening, and we post them, and everything is done. And of course, you have the 10 days allowance for overseas ballots to come back after the election. And then you have some provisional ballots that the canvassing board needs to adjudicate and things like that. So usually the numbers of added totals to the election night totals are very insignificant almost, but we still count every one of them.
Right. Well, thank you for laying that out. I know the signature verification was something that the law has been changed in recently, not like this year, but something that has raised a lot of concern about signature matching. And then some of the voting rights groups have said, look, as you get older, your signature changes, sometimes, and it's, I can say personally, not about getting older, but about the, signing on that pad, the electronic pad, when you sign in,
Yep.
sometimes that doesn't look just like your signature that when you registered to vote 30 years ago. What about this? Can you talk about the signature verification? How do you, on the provisional ballots too, how much of an issue is that?
Well, believe it or not, the provisional ballots don't present the challenge. The signature there doesn't
That's
present
right.
the challenge that the
Yeah.
driver's license bureau.
Yeah,
We
I
all
meant
know
the
those-
mail-in ballots. I'm sorry. I meant the mail-in ballots.
Well,
yeah.
and even there, we as an association of supervisors for the last several years have been trying to get the legislature to put into the statute that we must have what we call a wet signature. In other words, instead of the voter being able to sign the signature pad at the motor vehicle place, they're required to sign a piece of paper, and that signature is the one that we want to use as our benchmark for comparison. But so far, the legislature has not chosen to give us that request. So we still have to deal. And
What's the pushback on that? Do you know what the pushback is on that?
No, they're the legislature, Dara. They don't have to give you a reason. They just do it.
As you know.
But here's the thing, and I told the committees there when I first started. I happen to be the legislative committee chairman of our association of supervisors also. But having been there so recently, there I was testifying before some of my former peers in the Senate. And I explained to them very clearly, I said, when I was sitting over there on your side of the dais, I was making decisions on election law. I was served on the Ethics and Elections Committee, and we had those decisions to make. And then when I became supervisor of elections, I saw how little I knew as a legislator. And I even told them, I said, if my wife and I were going to remodel our kitchen and our home, we would go to an architect and a construction firm to ask them how to do it. We would not go to our local dentist and ask him how to fix our kitchen. And what I'm telling you as a legislator, before you want to change the laws dealing with voting, why don't you come ask the elections professionals that know what you're doing and how to do it? If the legislature will just come to the Supervisors Association and say, listen, we want to accomplish X, Y, or Z. How can we do that? We'd be happy to work with them and show them either how it can be accomplished or why it is unwise to do so. And it can be a very synergistic operation. And fortunately, so far, they have listened to us on most things. Some things they don't. They just go ahead and do what they want to. I have said so many times, to me, the biggest tragedy of the 2020 election here in America was not who won or who lost the candidacy. The biggest tragedy is the amount of undermining of the confidence of the voters that has taken place because so many lies have been told. People are making up stories that have absolutely no basis in fact whatsoever. People are taking just reams and reams of data and misinterpreting it and giving completely incorrect conclusions that they have gleaned from that data because they didn't know how to use it. And consequently, many of the voters have had their confidence undermined. And we as supervisors are saying, please, remember, we're the ones that are still doing the election. We're the ones that are making sure the ballots are proofed and that the tabulation machines are programmed correctly. And no, they do not use the internet, so they have not been hacked. Anybody that tells you that our tabulation system has been hacked, I would look them straight now and tell them they're full of baloney or other things.
That right. Well, we don't bleep stuff out, so you feel free. But this was an issue during the August primary, because a lot of the websites where you have your unofficial results reporting, a lot of you use the same software. I think the vendor is based in Tallahassee, matter of fact. And that got either hacked or attacked or stressed or whatever. I think it was hacked. And so you couldn't.
Oh, no, wait. Stop right there.
Let me stop.
It was not
It wasn't hacked. Okay. It was,
the term stressed, it was overstressed.
Okay.
And thanks for bringing that up, Dara,
Yes.
because you're correct. Almost every supervisor across the state uses VR systems based in Tallahassee to do our websites with. They're a very good company. Part of their security measures, and there are multiple layers of security throughout all of our world of elections, but part of the VR layer of security is a logging system that logs anytime any IP address comes into their system, it logs it. Well, when you get an onslaught of many IP addresses coming in at one time, it overtaxed the capacity of their system. So it shut down completely. And I say, well, not really completely, but anyhow, was very lethargic. You could hardly get in.
Yeah.
And it's like if you have a room that you can put no more than 800 people in this particular room. Well, if you have 8,000 people trying to get in, the other people that are outside must wait till somebody in that room.
It's a bottleneck. It creates a bottleneck.
That's exactly right. And that's what happened on election night. That's a complete explanation. Another good thing is it had absolutely no connection whatsoever with the tabulation system.
Right.
That was only a reporting system, and there's an air gap between the tabulation system and the reporting system.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I apologize for mischaracterizing that, but I did want to bring it up because it created quite a flutter and a flurry and a kerfuffle.
And the people deserve to know what happened and have an accurate explanation of it. And that's what I'm trying to do there.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. One of the changes that we have over the past few years since you've been elected as supervisor is we now have a state elections security office. They are, critics call them the elections police. They are tasked with investigating alleged fraud, and their work has participated in or contributed to people getting arrested, returning citizens, former felons who believed they were eligible to vote. In some cases, they received voter registration cards, thought they were okay to vote. They were not. Now that office is looking into fraudulent petition signatures, petitions. Does that contribute to voters, a diminishment of voters' confidence in the elections process if we need a whole office of investigators looking into fraud?
As so many things occur in government, it's multifaceted, Dara. First, the prosecutorial duties lie in the state attorneys that cover the territory where the crimes are committed. The Office of Election Crimes and Security does the investigation work for it, and they work hand in hand with the state attorneys. The uniqueness of election law is one factor that I'm sure was considered when they decided to establish this office. And the infrequency of utilization of those statutes by your state attorneys was also a factor. And I was not party to any of the conversations that took place before the law was passed. Frankly, I feel like that once everything dies down, those employees of that office are going to feel like the Maytag repairmen because there's not that much out there for them to really sink their teeth into.
Right.
You mentioned the returning citizens. Now I'm going to be critical of my friends there in the legislature. They should have implemented Amendment 4 in a much, much better way than they did. And my suggestion is that, and it's not too late, it's really a shame that they've waited this long, but had I been there, I would have certainly uh, giving them the advantage of my view on it. Number one, you have to recognize the enormity of the data that's out there on the thousands and thousands of felons. And so you have to separate those felonies that are dealing with murder or sexual crimes,
Right.
and say to all of those people right there, okay, listen, your goose is cooked.
That's
And so you're not going to get to vote.
They were not
But-
included in the constitutional amendment that restored voting
that
rights
is-
to former felons.
That is correct. But you still need to have a clear definition of which crimes fall under those definitions of exclusion. But because of the enormity, they needed to just establish a cutoff date. I don't care, pick any arbitrary date. January 1st of 1970, 1980, 1990, whatever you might say, and say, listen, if you committed your felony prior to that particular date and it didn't have anything to do with sex or murder, then you're good to go. We're not even going to bother with it. It's been a long time in our past, and you're good to vote. So go vote and be done with it. Then they should say, okay, clerks of the court, every one of you, you must go through all of your felon convictions from that date forward and send to this email address all of the data relating to who the criminal was, who the victim was, what the sentences were, all aspects of that sentence. Were there any restitution required? Is there any probation? Are there any court costs? And I've learned since all this happened that the inmates in our prison system are charged a daily rate also.
Yeah.
So, and they need to clarify, is that daily rate included in the complete terms of your sentence? Give everybody a clear definition of what must be met and have a centralized database that can be queried so that these people can have a clear idea of, yes, I am qualified, or no, I'm not. Everybody deserves to know the truth, and those people deserve it too. And the legislature could have made, and they still can, if they'll just have the will to do it.
You're a Republican. You're by no means lefty. I don't know by nowadays standards if you'd be called a moderate or a conservative, whatever your label is. I appreciate you saying this because I've covered this issue from the get-go. I know a lot of the people involved. I know a lot of the people who are trying to, I've had people reach out to me personally and they just don't know. You heard the testimony. There were records that were kept literally in a shoebox in one of the clerk's offices going back. And so these records are very difficult to find. You're talking about sometimes decades old, and there is a lot of uncertainty. And there is now they're just working on this advisory opinion process, because you can request an advisory opinion from the Secretary of State. That has been a very lengthy process and does not necessarily result in a yes or no answer. So it is, at some point, particularly people who've spent time in prison, like they really do not want to break the law and go back to prison.
That's right. Absolutely. And they should not be put in a compromised position of maybe so, maybe no. And I don't know about you, but I suspect that you were a typical kid growing up and you disobeyed your parents from time to time, and they punished you.
I ran away from home when I was 16 and I never went back. So that's,
okay.
There's a story there.
Stimulated that runaway was some discipline that you didn't like, but nevertheless, in my case, the discipline was meted out, and whether I liked it or not. But after it was over with, after I had served my sentence, quote unquote, then all was forgiven. And if I had learned my lesson, I wouldn't do that again. And that burden was not held over my head for the rest of my time. And these men and women that have committed these felonies, they need not have that held over their head for the rest of their lives either. They're Americans, they're citizens, and they have done their time. They did the crime, they've done their time. Now let's do our part to help them become fully functioning citizens once again. and set up a system that will clearly let them know what their status is.
We'll be right back with Lake County Supervisor of Elections, Alan Hayes.
At Tampa Electric, we're proud to provide 99.9% service reliability in blue skies and gray. We're modernizing our grid to increase resilience for the families and businesses that depend on us every day. Year-round, we harden our system against extreme weather by burying power lines, maintaining line clearance, improving substations, and upgrading systems to restore power faster. Because the work we do now means reliable power for a bright future. Learn more at tampaelectric.com/reliability.
Thanks for joining us. We are here today with Lake County Supervisor of Elections, Alan Hayes. I wanted to ask about the petition signatures now. The whole... Look, I've been covering these ballot initiatives for many, many years. The legislature has imposed many laws trying to make it harder to get to get them on the ballot. We've changed this was approved by voters, that it now requires 60% voter approval for passage. Do you think there needs to be a point where once the signatures, once something's on the ballot, people are voting on these issues in November, two that I'm thinking of that are top of mind, and do you think that there needs to be a cutoff date for that, where, okay, the signatures are in, you all have certified them, they come to you, you say whether they're good or not. There is fraud. There's just always been people who've tried to, bake the cake on the initiatives. The petition gatherers, they used to be paid by the signature, and so they'd falsify signatures so they could get paid extra. Do you know what I mean? Like, this is a problem. This is a process that has been problematic and will probably always have some problems because of the nature of the game. But do you think there needs to be some sort of a cutoff date where once it's on the ballot, now it's there, people are going to vote on it? Should we be going through and looking back at all these signatures that have already been sorted by you guys?
If the investigation that they're conducting now uncovers a significant corpus, if you will, of fraudulent activity there, number one, my question is, why wasn't that caught by the various supervisors of elections in their office when the signature verification process was taking place? That's the first question that has to be answered. And then we need to go from there and find out how are these alleged forged signatures really that, or are they not? Mm-hmm. And I don't have the answer to my question. It's very unfortunate. I know what we do here in our office through the verification process. Every person in this office that has anything to do with signature verification, whether it be on a petition for an issue, or whether it be on a candidate petition for qualification to the office, or whether it be on a vote by mail ballot, all signature verification personnel in this office have completed the 2-hour course online administered by the Division of Elections in the 8 different points to look for when you're verifying a signature. I would expect that all offices across the county do that, across the state do that, but I'm not sure that they do. So I can only speak to what we do here. And, we have to accept a certain level of error in the fact that you got human eyes that are looking at it. Some of them have been sitting there for 6 or 7 hours a day looking at these things, and you may miss some points that somebody with a fresh set of eyes could have picked up. One of the things that we do on the vote by mail ballots, which doesn't have a thing in the world to do with the petitions,
right?
But we have an electronic machine that looks at the signatures, much like it's using the same technology that banks use when they verify the signature on a check. And that machine then gives us a printout of the names of all the signatures it verified, all the signatures that it did not verify, and those that it could not read one way or the other. And then we put human eyes to those that were not verified and those that it could not read to go from there. It diminishes our workload, and the reliability of the machine is quite high. So we help ourselves that way. But not all offices across the state have that electronic advantage. And
Right.
particularly, that's another thing that makes Florida somewhat unique. We have probably, offhand, I'd say 15 or so counties that are very high in population. Your Miami-Dades, of course, and Broward, and then you got Duval and Orange and Hillsborough and Pinellas. But even Brevard County is quite larger in population than Lake County is. And then you go out to Lafayette County, little old Mayo up there, and there's several counties in Florida that have fewer than 10,000 voters. And we have some precincts right here in Lake County that have more than 10,000 voters in them. So the smaller counties don't have the budget to buy some of the sophisticated equipment that the others are fortunate enough to have. There's a time when we have to make a decision. Okay, is this a valuable enough adjunct to our process that it's worthwhile for the state to furnish the funding for those smaller counties to do that? And of course, we have the fiscally constrained
counties.
Yeah, exactly. And so the state's already giving them a bunch of money, but they could also give a bunch. Now, here's another factor too, that Secretary Byrd has made no secret of the fact that he would like to see the state furnish automatic auditing systems to every county. Right now, we have about 32 or 34 counties that have purchased these systems, but the advantage is it gives you a complete audit of every contest in every precinct in that election. And it's a machine. It's a completely independent machine from your tabulation system. So you have your tabulation totals over here, and every ballot that is run through that tabulation system is also run through the audit system. And then you can compare the totals to say, okay, what is the variation? And you would say, well, there shouldn't be any variation. Oh, wait, not so quick, as old Lee Corso would say on Saturday. Let's look at the whole picture. Number one, you have two separate systems manufactured by two different companies, and the scanners in those systems are equally manufactured by different companies also. So there's one source. Then you have the sensitivity of the sensor and the humongous variation of density of marks by the voters when they're coloring in that oval. And so they won't necessarily read every one of them alike, but you can tell that comparison sheet gives you a head-to-head comparison in precinct number 13. Candidate A got X number of votes and candidate B got Y number of votes in the tabulation system. Did X and Y equal each other in the audit system or not? And if not, what was the variation? Was it 2 votes or was it 10 votes? That sort of thing. And it's wonderful. Well, Secretary Cord has said he would love to see every county in the state have that system. We have it here in Lake County. It works beautifully. And we love it. So, I mean, it's just a lot of variation across the state of Florida.
Well, I've talked to Mark Early a lot. He's my local supervisor, and he also knows all the ins and outs of the elections processes throughout the state. And he has talked about humidity affecting the ballots too.
Definitely, yeah.
So that would affect the way that the machines can read them, especially. And then also you get kind of wear and tear. I mean, they're paper. So if you run them through, then you run them through. They're stored somewhere. You have to keep them in Florida's hot. It's humid. You know what I mean?
Time have elections on rainy afternoons too. And early voting, has rainy afternoons sometime. There are just so many variations there. So you can't expect it to be a perfect match, but you can certainly get a very good view of how close it is.
I was listening. I went to a meeting the Division of Elections recently had. I didn't hear you call into this, but they redid the rule about how the canvassing boards need to evaluate markings on ballots. So in other words, if you
The
circle
voter intent manual.
yes,
Yeah,
the voter intent. Thank you for helping me there. Okay, I helped you with fiscally constrained voter intent manual, which I understand that was quite a little feisty discussion. Maybe not that, but there was a feisty discussion at the supervisors conference. But I was at that meeting about the voter intent, and it was interesting because they have these examples, and you have to go by whatever they say. If you circle it, but you circle it once, then you have to look kind of at the gestalt or at the whole ballot. So if you circled it, and if you bubbled it in one area, but you circled it in the other, like, does that count? So there are some subjective decisions that supervisors have to make. I just wanted to, I know the answer to this, but I wanted to give you the opportunity to let our listeners know. Based on what I heard, the input from the supervisors who participated in that meeting and contributed remarks in writing, I feel like the supervisors really want to err on the side of giving the voter the biggest benefit of the doubt and allowing them to, trying really hard to understand what they mean. And, if they don't circle them in the same exact way for every race, still allowing those races to count if they communicated clearly what their intent was. Am I right?
And that's one of the things that...
I'm sorry, you broke out a little bit. Can you...
Oh, I said, yes, you're absolutely correct. And that's one of the things that I'm very proud of, to be associated with this group of supervisors. They are a stellar group of men and women of integrity. And we have the abundant blessing of being able to work with some superb individuals on our various teams at the various county levels, And I've been attending their meetings now for 9 years. Never once have I heard one supervisor refer to another one as that Democrat or that Republican. We are just like a group of Saturday afternoon football referees. We don't care what color jersey you wear. Is it by the book or not? And if it's not, we're going to throw a flag on it and let the chips fall where they may. The integrity of that group of supervisors is absolutely wonderful. And yes, we want to err on the side. And what I tell all my people doing the signature verification, and I say, listen, you need to be able to defend your decision. When you decide, yes, that is a match, or no, that isn't a match, be prepared to defend that decision in a court of law. If we get sued on that particular signature, I want you to be able to tell the court why you rejected it or why you accepted it, if it was a wishy-washy. And you can do the same thing. Now, here's an important factor. When we're looking at the ballot and the markings there, the supervisor has only one voice out of 3.
That's
and the supervisor does not make the decision.
On the canvassing board, which is made up of the supervisor, the county, is it the county court chief judge?
No, the chief judge of the circuit appoints a county. Yeah, the county court judge is the chairperson of the canvassing board. You have the county commissioner or their designee, chairman of the county commissioner or their designee, and the supervisor of elections.
Right.
That composes the canvassing board. If the supervisor of elections is on the ballot, as I am this year, and several others are this year, then our role is a non-voting member. We're simply there in an advisory capacity, but the judge then appoints an alternate to be the voting member. So you always have 3 voting members. But if the supervisor's name is on the ballot, then they're not voting on that decisions.
Are you on the ballot in the general election? I thought you...
Yeah, they put a write-in to close the primary in my race, so we go through the November thing.
Do you want to talk about like election denier folks who ran for office and didn't get elected? I saw a story recently that there were a bunch. When I say election denier, I'm using shorthand. It's not really a term that I use or have ever used in a story.
Well, I use the term wackadoodles.
Okay. And it looks like the wackadoodles, quoting you, got their butts handed to them in the primary election. So what are your thoughts on that?
They deserved it, and they got it. You know, I welcome an opportunity to explain our processes to anybody that asks the question, and I respect them and their need to know and their right to know. But when I give you an answer to the question, don't you dare accuse me of not telling you the truth. And when you have not administered any elections at all, you have no business questioning what I told you as truthful. And that's why I don't have any patience at all with those people. I have spent personally hour upon hour giving them the truthful answer to their question, and they refuse to accept the truth. They are just blinded by their obsession over the 2020 election. They have made up more cockamamie stories than you can count. One of their stupid lawsuits was filed in federal court, and the judge took one hearing and looked at it and threw it out with prejudice. Mm-hmm. I had read that lawsuit, all 70-something pages of it, and I told my wife, I said, you know, the clown that wrote this stuff should forget about trying to be a lawyer. They need to go to Hollywood and start writing movie scripts with that kind of imagination. And that's the kind of nonsense that supervisors out across this state have been subjected to. We're running a very serious business, and we don't have time to put up with all of that crap.
Right.
That's what it boils down to. And as I've said before, I'm sick and tired of it. I have no patience for them at all. You ask me a question, I'm going to give you a straight answer to the question, and it's going to be truthful. Now, if it doesn't fit your narrative, that's your problem, Clyde, not mine. And so that's why I'm absolutely fed up with it, and I will not give them another moment of my time.
Are you concerned about, in Florida, not so much, I guess. President Donald Trump is expected to, let's just say it's the people who are raising questions about the election are people who believe that Donald Trump won and that President Biden was not the real victor. As you said, nowhere have they been successful in the country. And I guess my question is, maybe perhaps not in Florida where President Trump is expected to win, but are you concerned about that this persistent, it's 4 years now. A lot of us thought people would get over it and move on. They have not, clearly. Are you concerned about what happens after the election in November if one side wins and one side loses?
I'm concerned for the future of this country. When we have people that have so blatantly disrespected the Constitution of this country, we're in a world of hurt. And the people of this country are going to have a real serious introspective period and look in their own hearts and learn about that Constitution and say, are we or are we not going to abide by this Constitution? My personal suggestion is an emphatic yes, you better abide by it. The average duration of any constitutional government across the globe is 17 years. Our Constitution has been in force for over almost 250 years. And it is unquestionably the best governing document man has ever written. And to disrespect that document, as so many people are doing, is a crime against America, and it needs to be corrected. So that's step one. The Americans need to look introspectively and say, okay, let's look at the Constitution. There are some who are even so bold as to say it's outdated, needs to be abandoned and all that stuff. Well, I vehemently disagree with that. There have been men and women that have died defending that Constitution and defending that flag. How dare you suggest that it be antiquated and out of date? John Adams clearly said that Constitution is designed to govern a moral and religious people, and it's unfit to govern any other. That one statement should tell everybody we need to become once again a moral and religious country. That document was based on biblical scriptures. When you examine the correspondence between the founders, the source of reference that was mentioned more frequently than any other source of reference in the construction of that Constitution was the Bible itself. And our school systems have not been teaching these things. Most of what I just quoted to you, I've learned within the last 5 years myself. And we need to get our schools to teach the truth about America and to teach the truth about other forms of government, communism, socialism, fascism, all of this other stuff. Truth is what sets you free. If you're believing a bunch of lies, you're a captive. You're not a free person. Even the person propagating those lies is captive to their lies also. And we as Americans don't deserve to be captive to a bunch of lies. We should stand on the truth, speak the truth, and then you will be free. We spent a lot of time, Dara, and I'm not trying to usurp your moderation of the conversation.
No, interruption is part of my culture, so if I need to interrupt, I will. I'm letting you roll. Go roll.
All right. Well, let's talk about how can we be more secure and more sure of the November election that's just around the corner. If you're planning to vote by mail, make sure that your signature is up to date. Make sure that if you're going to vote in person, you know the location of your early voting sites, or for sure know the location of your precinct polling place. Don't assume that, oh, well, I went to vote early voting at the Arts and Recreation Center, then I'm going to go there to vote on Election Day, because no, your precinct polling place may be 15 miles away from the Arts and Rec Center.
And they change. They're not always the same. So you need to make sure that your precinct polling place has not changed from when you went 2 years ago.
Exactly that. And, use your local supervisor's office as your source of trusted information. Don't rely on social media, whatever you do. There's more garbage out there than you can fill the whole dump with. So don't hesitate. Pick up the phone or pick up your computer and send an email asking your questions of your local supervisor of elections. There's where you will get an accurate answer to all these things. And if you haven't updated your signature, download the form. You can do it online and sign the form and then send it in. And that then will be scanned into your record to be your updated signature.
Well, thank you. And I love it when I always say this, my listeners will know when somebody answers the question before I asked it. So please don't apologize, because you didn't hijack the podcast at all. I was about to ask you what's the advice to voters. So thank you for that. I have just a couple more questions. You've been very generous with your time. It's always a pleasure to chat with you. What's the biggest challenge for you and your colleagues going into the 2024 election, into the general?
Making sure that the people accept what we tell them as being truthful. Making sure that the people know and understand that we do have a secure system. Our tabulation systems are never, ever connected to the internet, and they are not hacked. And anybody tells you anything differently is full of baloney. The biggest challenge, I think you ask any supervisor across this state, our biggest challenge is refreshing the confidence of the people in our systems because of the lies that have been told about elections in Florida. And it's so sad.
Yeah, it is sad. I don't know if I ever told you this story, but when I turned 18, I was in college, and I was so excited about voting that I volunteered as an election worker. I went to the University of Michigan, and there were many. I was the only person who was very young at that time, and
Hmm.
we had the voting booths with the curtains. I don't know if
Yeah.
you remember those. That's how old I am. We had the voting booths with the curtains, and the clerk, when it was time to tabulate all the votes in the voting booths, the clerk, I kid you not, this really does age me. I am giving away my age here. The clerk pulled out her checkbook, and she had one of those little calculators on her checkbook, a little calculator on her checkbook, and that's what they were using to tabulate all the votes from the booths. And since I was the youngest and I had the best eyes, I was in charge of handling the calculator. So that's I know my election supervisor friends love that story.
You bring up a very good point, though, and that is two points I want to make here. Number one, here in Lake County, we have about 750 or 800 election workers that we hire for election day. There is no way on earth that we could possibly run our elections without those faithful men and women who volunteer their time. They are paid. They're not.
Yeah.
They're volunteers only in the concept of, yes, I'm willing to help, but yes, they are compensated for their time, and they do a tremendous job for us. That being said, we're always looking for new blood. We welcome college students. The big thing, and it was funny when I first became a supervisor. I was talking to Kim Barton, the supervisor there in Alachua County, and I said, "Boy, you got a mother lode of talent, the youthful talent right there. Those college students can always use some beer money, and you pay them a couple $100 for a day of work at the polls and blah blah blah." She said, "Alan, so many times they're unreliable.
Yeah.
You through training, then they sleep in and don't show up. But still, we're looking for good election workers to come, go through the training. Every one of them is trained. Now, here's
it's a long day. I mean, I'll tell you, it's a long day. It's a 12-hour day, and it's a long day.
Well, and you figure this 12 hours, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. at the open for business.
Yes.
But they've got to be there at 6 a.m. and to do that, for you ladies that have to paint the barn, you're going to be up at 4:30.
Paint the barn.
Get all the war paint on.
That's right.
For those who are voting in person, whether it be early voting or election day, take a moment and just say thank you to those workers that are handling your situation that day, whether it be checking in or whether the person that's giving you your ballot or handling the tabulation machine. Just take a quick moment. Tell them you appreciate them being there.
Yeah, I do that because I like to vote. I get my my mail-in ballot, but I like to vote on election day because I'm old and I'm old school. And I just, I see my neighbors. I like to see how many people are there, whatever. I'm nosy also. And, I always do thank them. And it doesn't hurt to be nice.
That's right. That's right. It sure does. Now, here's another thing, too. You may slap me here, but that's all right. You get a sample ballot before you go to vote anyhow. That vote by mail ballot that we have to mail to you because you asked for it cost a whole lot more than that sample ballot.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So stop. He's telling me stop, Dara. Okay. I never really thought of that. That's true. If I'm not going, sometimes I used to be traveling a lot with campaigns and whatnot around election day. I'm not doing that so much anymore, but I appreciate that. I'm not going to slap you. I'm going to thank you for that. 2 more quick questions. You mentioned, a lot of lies, a lot of untruth, people coming, people not coming. I have a friend who is older. She used to work for many years in Georgia as as a election worker, poll worker, and she stopped because she just got too scared and she stopped doing it in Georgia. How about you? Have you seen any violence or had to take any precautions or heard about that anywhere else around the state?
Well, we haven't seen any violence that I'm aware of, but Dara, security is one of those things that we take very, very seriously. We prepare for the worst and we pray for the best. And we have various security measures in place. We teach our election workers what to do, how to do, when to do if X, Y, or Z occurs. You know, we work very closely with our local sheriff's department, with our chiefs of police, and we have contingency plans. If A happens, then we need to do B or C, and we know which way to go and that sort of thing. It's unfathomable to me how anybody could get so possessed that they would literally go out and inflict physical harm on somebody who's doing their civic duty, whether it be the election worker that's taking care of the voters or whether it be the voters themselves that are actually voting. And it's a wonderful country populated by millions of wonderful people and polluted by a few idiots. It's about what we have. And some of them do some ugly, ugly things.
If I asked you who you're going to vote for president in November, would you tell me?
Yeah.
Who are you going to vote for?
Donald Trump.
And you don't feel like what he's done about questioning the election results in 2020 have made your job harder?
If he were sitting here right now, I'd look him straight now and I'd say, Donald, will you shut your dad-burned mouth and quit tweeting? You are responsible for undermining the confidence of the people on this continent, and you need to hush.
But yet you're going to vote for him.
That's right.
That's interesting.
And now here, thank you for bringing that up. Yeah. Here's the thing, okay? You need to understand, just because you have a disagreement with somebody 10% of the time, they're not your enemy. I think it was Ronald Reagan who pointed out that if a legislator votes with you 80% of the time, he's still your friend. You know, you remember Jeremy Ring?
I do remember Jeremy, yeah.
Here's the contrast, okay? Jeremy Ring is a multimillionaire, Jewish faith fellow, little short guy, filthy rich from big city Broward County. Here's Alan Hayes, a little redneck dentist from Umatilla, Florida. Who ever heard of it? And Jerry was a Democrat. I'm a Republican. He's Jewish. I'm Christian. It's this and that and the other, all kinds of differences. Jeremy and Alan are good friends to this day. And he told me, he said, Alan, one of these days I may run for governor. And if I do, you're going to be my lieutenant governor. And he says, we're going to have a cute little campaign slogan. It's called Vote for the Heeb and the Hick. Now,
oh my God.
You know, people need to learn to separate personality from policy. If you like the policies that resulted in the economic times, in the international relations times, and in the strength of military times that we had under Donald Trump's administration, how could you not vote for him now? When you compare the condition of this country today, whether it be the economy, whether it be the defense systems, whether it be the international standing and all of that, how could you possibly vote for the opponent? Some people are going to.
Yeah.
I probably got some friends that are going to, and they'll still be my friends.
We are friends, and I'm very happy to have you on the show. It's been just a pleasure to chat with you. Thank you so much. Is there anything that we didn't hit on that you think we need to talk about to make sure people are ready to vote in November?
Again, to recap, if I may, it's number one, be confident of the security of the system, be confident of the integrity of the people that are running the system, and take the time to become an informed voter. so that you know about the candidates that you're choosing, so that you know about the issues that you're choosing. One thing that a lot of people don't think about here in Florida is don't leave blank the constitutional amendments. Vote yes or no, but don't leave them blank. And here's why. If you know, of course it depends on philosophy too. I would rather vote for the status quo than to leave it blank and endanger that status quo being changed. And if you the law says that 60% of the people who vote on Amendment 1 must vote for it in order for it to become a part of the Constitution. And the same for Amendment 2 and the same for Amendment 3. So if you have 1 million people that are going to vote for Amendment 1, that means 600,000 have to vote yes.
Right.
But if 100,000 people leave it blank and you have only 900,000 vote for it, then you have to have only 540,000 yes votes. Okay. And the same thing goes for Amendment 2 through 6.
So make your voice heard.
Make your voice heard. Don't leave the constitutional amendments blank.
Okay, that's really good advice. Alan Hayes, Supervisor of Elections in Lake County, former legislator. Thank you so much for joining Deeper Dive today. It's been a real treat.
All right. Take care, Dara. Good talking with you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to Deeper Dive with Dara, a podcast by the News Service of Florida, hosted by News Service senior writer Dara Cam and produced by me, Mike Exline. Music for the podcast was recorded by Periodic Labs, LLC. To tell us what you like to hear, what you've thought about the podcast so far, or even just to mention how awesome we are, we have a new email address and we'd love to hear from you.
That's right. We'd love to hear from you. Email us at podcasts with an S at e.newsserviceflorida.com. I know it's a mouthful, but it's podcasts with an S at e.newsserviceflorida.com.